So I want you to picture a scenario. It's Tuesday afternoon. Let's say 2 p.m. It's that specific time of the week where the caffeine is starting to wear off, but the workload is, well, it's just ramping up.
The 2 p.m. slump.
Yeah, exactly. And you've finally managed to carve out a block of time for what we like to call deep work. Maybe it's a strategy document you've been putting off. Maybe it's product development, the stuff that actually moves the needle for your business.
The important stuff.
The important stuff. You sit down, you open the document, you take a breath, and then ding.
The sound that kills all productivity.
Instantly. It's an email notification. Then your phone lights up with a text. Then Slack goes off. And suddenly that whole strategic mindset is just shattered. You look at the inbox and it's flooding. Where is my order? I can't log in. I need to speak to a manager right now.
And it's not just a distraction, right? It feels visceral. It feels like you're standing in a boat that's taking on water and you're trying to bail it out with a teaspoon.
That is the perfect analogy. It's a very specific kind of anxiety. We're calling this the Tuesday afternoon scenario. But honestly, for most business owners or managers, it's just called every single day.
Right. It's the feeling of drowning in all the reactive work, the noise, while the proactive, the revenue-generating core work just sits there gathering dust.
And the frustration is that you shouldn't be the one answering these emails. Your time is worth more than resetting a customer's password. But if you don't do it, who will?
Exactly.
And the conventional wisdom usually offers two solutions. And they both kind of stink.
They really do. Door number one. You hire domestically, you find a local admin or a support person. The problem there is just the price tag. I mean, you're talking $40,000, $50,000, maybe $60,000 a year for a base salary.
And that's just the start.
Oh, yeah. Then you add benefits,
Right.
Payroll tax, equipment, office space. For a small to medium business, that is a massive, massive line item to add to the P&L just to clear an inbox.
So you panic.
Mm-hmm.
And you go for door number two. You think, okay, I read about this online, I'll outsource it. You go to one of those freelance platforms. You find the cheapest option available, maybe $3, $4, $5 an hour.
And you feel like a genius.
For about a week. And then reality hits. You spend your entire day rewriting their emails because the tone is wrong or the grammar is off or they just didn't understand the context of the customer's problem.
It's the classic cheap versus good paradox. It's a trap. The market tells you that you can either bleed money hiring locals or you can bleed time managing cheap outsourcing. It's presented as this binary choice.
And what we're going to do today is look at a stack of research that suggests this binary might actually be false. We are doing a deep dive into a concept called cultural nearshoring.
Cultural nearshoring?
Yeah, it sounds like a buzzword, I know. But as I was reading through the source material, specifically a strategic white paper and a company profile on an agency called VA Connect, it started to click. This isn't just about finding cheaper labor, it's about finding labor that kind of thinks the way you think.
Exactly. The mission for this deep dive is to unpack whether there's a third door. Can you get high-quality, culturally aligned support without that six-figure price tag? We're going to look at the psychology of response times, the hidden failures of the traditional call center model, and specifically why South Africa has emerged as this sort of Goldilocks zone for talent.
In bed, I have to warn you, some of the statistics we found regarding what happens when you ignore that inbox, they are legitimate nightmare fuel.
They are brutal, but they're necessary to understand the scale of the problem.
So let's start there. Let's start with the invisible costs, because I think a lot of us, we rationalize the delay. We think, look, I'm busy. If I answer that customer inquiry 4 hours from now or even tomorrow morning, it's not a big deal. At least I'm answering it.
And that one rationalization is costing the global economy billions. The data in the white paper really analyzes this response time psychology. And it turns out speed isn't just a nice to have. It is the primary driver of conversion.
The primary driver, more than price or features.
In that initial interaction, yes. There's a study cited that shows if a customer waits more than 1 hour for a response to an inquiry, their likelihood of converting, meaning actually buying something or signing up, drops by 60%.
Wait, hold on. 60%, 60, just from crossing the 60-minute mark?
60%, it's a cliff. It's not a gradual slope. You just fall off it.
Huh.
And if you wait 24 hours, you have essentially lost them. The probability drops to near zero. They are gone.
Wow.
They've either moved on to a competitor who answered the phone, or they've just lost that initial impulse to buy. The moment is gone.
That is wild to think about, because how many businesses Have that little autoresponder that says, "Thank you for your email. We will get back to you in 24 to 48 hours."
Oh, yeah.
You're basically putting up a sign that says, "We don't really want your money that badly."
Precisely. You are telling them to go away. There's another stat from the Harvard Business Review that the source has highlighted, often called the 7X statistic. It says that if you contact a potential lead within 1 hour of them reaching out, you are 7 times more likely to qualify that lead than if you waited just 1 hour longer.
7 times. Not 7%, 7 times.
7 times. That is the difference between a booming sales pipeline and a graveyard.
It really is. And when you aggregate this loss across the entire economy, the sources estimate that companies lose approximately $75 billion annually due to poor service.
$75 billion.
With a B.
That's money that was on the table, ready to be taken, that just evaporated because nobody answered the bell in time.
It's just gone. And you never even know you lost it. That's the insidious part.
So I want to dig into the why here. Why is 1 hour the magic number? Is everyone just that impatient these days, or is there something deeper going on psychologically? It's not just impatience, though that's part of it. It's about this concept of the warm lead. Think about the customer's journey for a second. When they fill out a form or send an email, they have taken an action. They are in a moment of high intent.
Okay.
They are thinking about your product or their problem right now. That is the zone. They've allocated mental and emotional energy to you in that moment.
They are emotionally invested. They're leaning in.
Correct. If you respond immediately, you are meeting them in that zone. You're capitalizing on that momentum. But if you delay, you are sending what the white paper calls an active signal. We tend to think of silence as neutral, right? I didn't say no, I just haven't said yes yet.
Yeah, that's how I think of it.
But in communication psychology, silence is an active message. A delayed response tells the customer, we do not value your time, or we are disorganized, or maybe even we don't care that much about your business.
I have definitely felt that as a customer. You send an inquiry, you hear nothing for 2 days. By the time they finally reply, even if the answer is helpful, you're already annoyed. You're starting the interaction from a place of friction.
Exactly. You're starting in a deficit. And that friction creates what the sources call the cascade effect. This is so important. It's not just about losing that one sale from that one person.
It ripples out.
It ripples out massively. First, it impacts the lifetime value, or LTV, of that customer. If they start the relationship annoyed, they're way less likely to buy upgrades, less likely to renew their subscription. Their overall value plummets.
And then they start talking.
You lose the referrals. A happy customer might tell 3 people. An unhappy customer tells the internet.
The Google review effect. The Twitter effect. One unanswered email on a Tuesday leads to a 1-star review on a Thursday, which scares off 10 potential customers next month. It just spirals.
Exactly. It's the butterfly effect of bad service. But the sources also point out another cost, one that I think is even more insidious because it happens inside your office walls.
Okay.
The burnout cycle.
This is critical because usually when we talk about customer service, we focus on the customer. But what about the person, whether it's the founder or an employee, who is actually staring at that overflowing inbox every day?
The data on this is, it's pretty alarming. One source notes that 59% of call center agents or support staff are at risk of burnout. 59%.
So more than half the people doing this job are on the edge of breaking down.
Right. And 87% report high stress levels. And it makes sense if you think about it. If you are understaffed and your response times are slow, every single customer you talk to is already angry.
Right. You aren't having pleasant problem-solving conversations. You're doing damage control all day long. You're essentially a corporate firefighter.
It's a vicious cycle. Poor response times lead to angry customers. Angry customers yell at your agents. The agents get stressed, they get demoralized, they burn out. Their quality of work then drops because they are exhausted and they stop caring.
Which leads to more mistakes.
Which leads to more angry customers. And the cycle just spins faster and faster.
And eventually, the agents just quit. They can't take it anymore.
They walk out the door. The turnover rates in the support industry are notoriously high, somewhere between 30% and 45% annually. I mean, think about that. In a team of 10, 3 or 4 people are leaving every single year.
That's a revolving door. And the cost to replace an employee, that's not trivial.
It's huge. It's usually estimated at 30% to 50% of their annual salary when you factor in recruitment, interviewing, training, and lost productivity while the new person ramps up.
So let's just do some quick napkin math here. If you have a small team of, say, 10 people, and you're paying them an average of, let's say, $40,000 a year,
Okay, so that's a $400,000 payroll. If you apply those turnover stats, let's say 30% turnover, that's 3 people a year. The cost to replace them could be, what, $15,000 each? So that's $45,000 right there.
But the source said 30 to 50%. Let's go higher.
Okay, let's say the total cost is closer to 50% of salary, so $20,000 per employee. If 4 people leave, that business could be losing 80, maybe over $100,000 a year. The source actually pegs it at $120,000 for a team like that.
$120,000. And here is the kicker you mentioned earlier, that money is usually invisible on a standard P&L sheet.
Totally invisible. You don't see a line item that says burnout expense or employee misery cost.
No, it hides under recruitment fees or training costs, or worst of all, it just looks like missed revenue targets.
Yeah.
You think you have a sales problem, but you actually have a support infrastructure problem. It's a silent killer of profitability.
It really is.
So this brings us full circle, back to the dilemma. Businesses feel this pain. They see the burnout. They see the lost sales. So they try to solve it by cutting costs. They look offshore.
And for the last 20 years, offshore has meant one thing, really. The Philippines or India.
The traditional outsourcing narrative. And look, we have to acknowledge the scale here. This is a massive industry. The Philippines employs over 1.3 million people in business process outsourcing, or BPO.
Yeah, and India's outsourcing sector is huge, thing like 7-9% of their entire GDP. It is a juggernaut.
And the pitch is incredibly seductive. You go on these sites and it says, get a dedicated virtual assistant for $3 to $5 an hour. Compared to the $25 or $30 an hour you'd pay domestically, it seems like a complete no-brainer.
It sounds too good to be true. And usually when something sounds too good to be true in business, there is a hidden cost somewhere. The sources for this deep dive go into great detail about what they call the hidden friction costs of this traditional model.
Friction, I like that term.
It's not that the people in these regions aren't hardworking. They are incredibly hardworking. But there are structural and cultural barriers that create this constant low-level friction.
Let's talk about the communication piece first. Because I think people assume, oh, they speak English, it'll be fine. And technically, yes, English is spoken. But is it the right English for the context?
That's the key question. It's not about vocabulary or grammar. You can teach vocabulary. It's about nuance. It's about idiom, context, and cultural reference. The white paper uses a great example to illustrate this. Imagine a U.S. manager says to their team, we really need to move the needle on this KPI by Friday.
Standard corporate speak. I've said that 1,000 times.
Right. To a U.S. or U.K. ear, move the needle implies a specific level of urgency and proactive effort. It means do whatever it takes to show progress. It's an instruction to be resourceful.
Right.
But in a different cultural context, a remote worker might translate the literal words but miss the intensity of the request. They might think, okay, I will work my normal amount and hope the numbers change. They miss the unspoken command.
And then Friday comes, the numbers haven't moved, and the manager is furious. They think the VA is lazy or incompetent.
And the worker is confused because they thought they did their job. That disconnect leads to what the source calls death by 1,000 paper cuts. You aren't necessarily having catastrophic failures every day, but you are constantly having to clarify, re-explain, and micromanage.
And that defeats the whole purpose of outsourcing. If I have to spend my time, which let's say is valued at $200 an hour, micromanaging a $5 an hour VA, I haven't saved any money. In fact, I've actually lost money.
You're losing a fortune. The savings evaporate in management overhead, and that's before you even get to the time zone issue. They call it the Manila Gap.
Oh, the time zone math. This is always a headache. I've lived this nightmare.
The mathematics of geography are stubborn. The Philippines is roughly 12 to 13 hours ahead of New York. That means real-time collaboration is basically impossible unless someone is suffering.
Someone is always working at 3 a.m.
Exactly. Either you are staying up until midnight to brief them, or they are working the graveyard shift to accommodate you, which is just not sustainable for high-quality creative work.
And we've all heard the marketing pitch. Work while you sleep. It's magical.
It's a great marketing slogan, but a terrible operational reality for complex work. If a problem arises at 2 p.m. New York time, right, in that Tuesday afternoon crunch we talked about, your team in Manila is asleep.
So you're stuck.
You're stuck. By the time they see it, it's the next day for you. You lose an entire 24-hour cycle on every single issue.
It slows everything down to a crawl. You can't just hop on a quick Zoom call to hash out a complex problem. You have to write a long, detailed email, hope they understand it, go to sleep, wake up, see they misunderstood it, write another long email. It's painful.
Complex problems require conversation, not just asynchronous email chains. And then there's the last piece of this puzzle, the issue of what they call the freelance mindset. A lot of people use platforms like Upwork or Fiverr to find these VAs because it's easy.
It's the Uberification of hiring. You just swipe right and hire someone.
But this carries a huge risk. On those platforms, you are often hiring mercenaries, not team members. They are constantly looking for the next best gig. If someone offers them 50 cents more an hour, they're gone.
And they just ghost you.
They ghost you. There is no loyalty, no career path with you. And when they leave, all that institutional knowledge walks out the door with them, and you are left starting from scratch, training a brand new person.
So we have really established the problem here. Domestic hiring is too expensive. Traditional low-cost outsourcing has high friction, bad time zones, and high turnover. This brings us to the core of our deep dive today, the concept of the cultural nearshore.
This is the pivot point. The whole idea here is that we need to distinguish between geography and culture. South Africa is geographically offshore. I mean, it's all the way down in the southern hemisphere, but culturally, it is nearshore.
That's a fascinating distinction. What does that actually mean in a business context? How does that play out?
It starts with language, but it goes much deeper. English is the lingua franca of business and government in South Africa. It's the language of commerce. But it's the quality of the communication that stands out. The source material talks a lot about the neutral accent.
Neutral accent.
Yeah, it's an accent that's highly comprehensible to both US and UK ears without that cognitive load of trying to decipher a heavy accent. It just sounds clear. The conversation flows more easily.
But you mentioned cultural literacy earlier. That seems even more important than just the accent. It's about getting the joke right.
Right.
Or getting the business reference.
It is. This is the crucial part. The source points out that South Africans consume a massive amount of Western media. They watch U.S. films, British TV series, they follow the same news cycles, the same business trends. They understand the shorthand of Western business.
Give me an example of that shorthand.
If you say, let's touch base, or we need to secure the Q4 runway, or let's circle back on that, they get it instantly. They understand the subtext. You don't have to explain the idiom.
That creates what the source called cultural resonance. The customer doesn't feel like they're talking to a script in a remote call center. They feel like they're talking to someone local, or at least someone who operates in their world.
Exactly. And then you layer on the time zone Goldilocks zone. South Africa is GMT +2.
Okay, break that down for us. Why is GMT +2 the magic number for this?
Well, think about the map. For the UK and Europe, South Africa is essentially a domestic time zone. London and Cape Town are often on the exact same time or just 1 hour apart. You have a full 8-hour business day of overlap. It's seamless.
Okay, so that's a huge win for Europe.
Right.
What about for the U.S. market?
For the U.S. East Coast, it's a 6 or 7 hour difference. That means you get about 7 to 8 hours of overlap in your working day. It allows for 3 to 4 hours of real-time collaboration every single morning.
So you can have your team meeting at 9 a.m. New York time.
And it's 3 or 4 p.m. in South Africa. They're still in their workday. You can hash out the strategy for the day face-to-face on Zoom, and then they have the rest of their afternoon to execute on it before their day ends.
That is huge. That means they are actually part of the team, not just a ghost working in the night. They can be in the daily stand-up.
Precisely. They are integrated. And we shouldn't overlook the institutional alignment. This is the boring stuff that actually matters a lot in business. Legal and education.
The infrastructure stuff. Lay it on me.
South Africa has a very strong tertiary education system. It produces professionals, accountants, lawyers, marketers, project managers, not just task doers. You're getting people with critical thinking skills.
Okay, so a high talent level.
And legally, they have an act called POPIA.
POPIA, you mentioned that earlier. It sounds like a flower.
It does. It stands for the Protection of Personal Information Act. And crucially, it was modeled directly on Europe's GDPR.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's not a small thing.
Yeah.
GDPR is the gold standard for data privacy globally.
Exactly. So if you are a U.S. or European company handling sensitive customer data, you know that the data handling in South Africa meets those stringent Western standards. Contracts are enforceable under a familiar legal framework. Your IP is protected. It's a sophisticated, stable, legal environment, unlike some other outsourcing hubs where IP laws are, let's say, suggestions.
So you've got the cultural fit, the time zone fit, the talent level, and the legal safety. Now let's pivot to the specific company mentioned in the sources because they seem to have built an entire operational model around these advantages. The company is VA Connect.
Right. VA Connect is interesting because they aren't some new startup jumping on a trend. They've been around since 2008, Originally, they were called Lime Tree Consulting, founded by a woman named Karen. The source didn't give her last name, but she seems to be the driving force. They rebranded to VA Connect in 2014.
And the stats in their company profile are pretty impressive. They claim to have delivered over 250,000 hours of support. And get this, in that entire history, they claim to have received only 2 bad reviews.
That is a 99.999% satisfaction rate. In the outsourcing world, where ghosting and poor quality are the norm, that is virtually unheard of. It's an outlier statistic.
It really is.
Yeah.
So how do they do it? What is their secret sauce? Because it seems like they operate very, very differently from an Upwork or even a generic placement agency.
It all comes down to the distinction between a managed agency and a freelance platform. It's a fundamentally different model.
Unpack that for us.
Yeah.
What does managed agency actually look like day to day for a client?
Okay, so on a freelance platform like Upwork, you are the HR manager. You have to write the job post, sift through 100 applications, interview them, test them, hire them, onboard them, train them, and if they're no good, you have to fire them. It's a huge time sink.
It's a full-time job just to manage a freelancer.
It is. VA Connect takes a strategy-first approach. Their intake isn't just, I need a body to answer emails. It's a diagnostic. They look at your workflows, your tech stack, your success metrics, and your pain points before they even introduce you to a candidate.
So they are consulting first, hiring second. They're solving the problem, not just filling a seat.
Correct. And I noticed something really interesting in their operational docs called standby and handover libraries. This sounded really, really smart to me.
I saw that too. It sounds a bit technical, but explain why a business owner should care about a library.
This is a game changer for business continuity. For every single client, VA Connect creates documentation. They build a literal library of your processes. How you answer certain emails, how you process refunds, how you manage your calendar, step by step.
Okay, so they're documenting everything. Why does that matter so much?
Because it solves the stranded client problem. This is a huge fear. If your VA gets sick or goes on maternity leave or wins the lottery and quits, normally in the freelance world, you are completely screwed.
Yeah, all that knowledge is just gone.
It's gone. You have to stop everything and retrain a new person from scratch for weeks, which brings back the Tuesday afternoon nightmare we started with.
Right back to drowning.
Exactly. But with VA Connect, because that library exists, a backup VA can step in, read the documentation, and pick up the work almost immediately, sometimes within hours. It creates redundancy and resilience in your operations.
That is continuity insurance. That is huge. You aren't dependent on one person's brain.
No.
You're dependent on a system.
A system.
Yeah.
And they back it up with some really impressive internal infrastructure. They have something they call VA Varsity.
I love the name. VA Varsity. It sounds like they have a university for VAs.
Laughs. It's pretty close. It's described as a Udemy for VAs. It's their own internal proprietary training platform. They aren't just hiring people and hoping for the best. They are continuously training them on new software like Salesforce and Zendesk, but also on soft skills like communication and, critically, on specific industries like real estate or legal or e-commerce.
So you're getting a professional who is constantly upskilling and staying current, not just a static worker who does the same thing for 5 years.
Correct. And then there's the wellness aspect, which ties directly back to that burnout problem we discussed. VA Connect has a program called Atomic Energy.
Which, again, sounds like a superhero power, but it's actually a wellness program.
Yes. And it's not just a subscription to a meditation app. It includes custom diet and exercise plans, mobility coaching, and mental health support for their VAs.
Now, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. Why would an outsourcing company care so much about their agents' diet and exercise? Is that just fluffy HR stuff to put on a website?
It sounds fluffy, but it's actually cold, hard economics. They understand the true cost of turnover. Healthy VAs are consistent VAs. Happy VAs are productive VAs. If you invest in their physical and mental well-being, they don't burn out. They don't quit.
So it directly combats those high turnover stats we saw in the industry average.
It's a direct countermeasure. It protects the client's investment by ensuring the person they're working with is stable, reliable, and performing at a high level.
That makes perfect sense. If my VA is happy and healthy, they show up and do great work. If they're stressed and sick, they don't. And they have one more program that caught my eye. VPness.
The two-way happiness program.
Huh?
This I thought was brilliant. Most agencies only ever ask the client, are you happy with the VA? And that's it.
Right.
VA Connect also systematically monitors the VA's satisfaction with the client.
Oh, that is very interesting. So if I'm a nightmare client who is rude and disorganized and changes my mind every 5 minutes, They're going to know about it.
They're going to know about it.
Oh,
It
yeah.
acts as an early warning system. If a VA is unhappy with a client relationship, VA Connect management can intervene before the relationship completely blows up. They might coach the client on how to communicate better or adjust the workflow, or, in a worst-case scenario, reassign the VA to a better fit client. It keeps the entire ecosystem stable.
That is a level of sophistication you just don't get when you hire a random freelancer off a platform. You're buying a managed relationship, not just a block of hours.
No, absolutely not. It's a partnership model from top to bottom.
Okay, let's talk about the bottom line, the economics. Because managed agency and wellness programs and VA varsity and all these systems, they sound expensive. Does this break the bank?
Surprisingly, no. And that's because of the economic arbitrage between South Africa and the US or UK. The model moves away from confusing hourly billing to simple packages. Let's look at some specifics from the source to make this real for people.
Hit me with the numbers. Let's ground this.
Okay. So for what they call a marketing assistant basic package, which is 40 hours a month, so about 10 hours a week, the cost is 12,000 Rand.
Okay, 12,000 Rand. For our listeners doing the mental conversion, what is that in US dollars, roughly?
Exchange rates always fluctuate, of course, but as of our research, that is approximately $650 a month.
$650 a month for 40 hours of skilled, culturally aligned marketing support. That's incredibly low. That's about $16 an hour.
It works out to roughly $16 an hour, yes. But remember, you're not paying payroll taxes, benefits, or any overhead. That is the flat all-in rate.
And what if I need more? What if I need someone basically full-time?
If you go up to their full-day support package, which is 150 hours a month, which is basically a full-time employee, the cost is roughly 322.50 Rand.
Okay, 322.50 Rand, which is about...
Approximately a $750 a month.
Wow. Okay, let's just pause on that for a second. $1,750 a month for a full-time, college-educated, culturally aligned staff member who is managed and continuously trained. I mean, a full-time U.S. employee at federal minimum wage would cost more than that before you add anything else.
Way more. The source material does a direct comparison. A typical U.S. support agent costs the company about $52,000 a year fully loaded. That's salary, benefits, taxes, equipment. The VA Connect equivalent for that 150-hour package is about $21,000 a year.
So you're saving $31,000 a year per head right out of the gate, just on direct costs.
And that's just the salary savings. That doesn't include the recruitment costs you avoid, the turnover costs you avoid, or the management overhead that you're not spending. When you factor those in, the savings are significantly higher.
The white paper had some really specific ROI scenarios, return on investment case studies. I think walking through these really helps ground the numbers because sometimes savings just feels abstract.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's look at the e-commerce scenario first. Imagine a growing online store. They're drowning in customer support tickets, just like we described. They add 150 hours of support via VA Connect.
Okay, so that costs them about $21,000 a year. That's the investment.
Right, that's the outflow. But by doing that, they immediately save the $52,000 it would have cost to hire that person domestically. So that's a net gain already. But, and this is the key, because they are now responding faster to customers, they protect an estimated $25,000 in revenue that would have been lost to churn and abandoned carts.
The 1 hour rule kicking in. They're capturing that lost revenue.
They're capturing it. So they spend $21,000 and get a total positive financial impact of over $77,000 when you add the savings and the protected revenue. The source calculated it as a 4.6x ROI. For every dollar they spend, they get nearly 5 back in value.
That is a no-brainer investment.
Yeah.
What about the law firm example? That one seemed interesting because lawyers' time is so directly monetizable.
This one is my favorite because it highlights opportunity costs so clearly. You have partners billing at $200, $300, maybe $400 an hour, but they are spending hours every week doing admin, work scheduling meetings, answering basic client emails, formatting documents.
They're doing $20 an hour work at a $400 an hour pay grade. It's terrible business.
It's insane. So they offload that admin work to a part-time legal VA from VA Connect. The cost is low, maybe $13,000 a year for a specialist package. But the partners now free up, let's say, 10 hours a week that they can now bill to clients. The impact was calculated at a $115,000 positive value swing. That's an 8.8x ROI.
That makes total sense. You shouldn't be doing work that you can outsource for a tiny fraction of your billable rate. It's just bad business math.
And the third scenario was a SaaS startup, a software company. The founders were spending all their time answering support tickets instead of building the product or selling it to new customers.
The classic founder trap. I have to do everything myself because no one else can.
By hiring a support VA, the founders got their time back to focus on product development and sales. They estimated a 4.7x ROI, mostly driven by an increase in their sales pipeline development and reduced customer churn. They could finally stop bailing water and start steering the ship again.
And beyond the raw ROI, there's the scalability factor, the flexibility. The source mentions how difficult and rigid it is to scale a team domestically.
It's incredibly rigid. Scaling from 1 to 5 employees in the U.S. takes months. You have to post jobs, interview, hire, set up payroll, buy laptops, find office space. It's a huge commitment, financially and logistically. The source estimates it's a $260,000 plus commitment to stand up a small team of 5.
And if the market turns, if you have a bad quarter and need to downsize,
You have to do layoffs, which is painful, legally complex, and it just kills morale for the employees who are left. It's a nightmare.
but with this kind of managed model,
With a partner like VA Connect, scaling hours up or down is just a conversation. Hey, we need to bump up to 150 hours next month for the holiday rush. Okay, done. Or, you know what, things are slow, we need to dial back to 80 hours for a bit. Okay, done. It eliminates all the employment law, risks wrongful termination, benefits compliance. It makes your workforce elastic.
elasticity is such a huge advantage in today's economy. Things change so fast, you need to be able to flex without breaking your business model.
It really is. It turns a huge fixed cost into a manageable variable cost.
Now, before we wrap up, we have to address the elephant in the room. We can't do a deep dive on work and support in 2026 without talking about AI.
The robot elephant in the room, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, the question's obvious. If ChatGPT can write an email in 3 seconds for free, why am I hiring a human in South Africa or anywhere else? Why don't I just let the bot do all of this?
It's a completely valid question, and for some simple, repetitive things, you absolutely should use the bot. But the white paper addresses this with what they call the humanization imperative.
Okay, let's unpack that. Humanization imperative.
The paradox is that as AI makes content cheap and ubiquitous, actual human connection becomes exponentially more valuable. Because AI is everywhere, we are drowning in perfect, generic, soulless text. We all know what it looks and feels like now.
It's true. You can spot an AI-generated email a mile away. It's grammatically perfect, but it feels polite filler. It has no personality.
It lacks the tell. That's the poker term for a subconscious action that reveals your hand. AI misses subtext. It doesn't hear the frustration in a customer's voice. It doesn't know when a customer needs reassurance versus just facts. It doesn't know when to break the rules to save a critical relationship.
So the model isn't human or AI. It's not a fight to the death.
No, not at all. The winning model is human NDAI. It's a hybrid workflow. The AI drafts the response for efficiency that saves a ton of time. It finds the tracking number. It looks up the return policy. But then the human VA reviews it. They adjust the tone. They add empathy. They check it for accuracy and nuance. And then they send it.
So you get the 10x productivity of AI, the speed. But the customer still feels like they are talking to a real caring person.
Exactly. VA Connect actually trains their VAs specifically to be what they call AI supervisors. Their job is to manage the AI and handle the emotional labor.
Emotional labor, that's a key term. Explain that a bit more.
AI cannot solve complex, high-stakes emotional problems. If a customer is furious because their critical shipment is lost and they need it for their daughter's wedding tomorrow, an AI saying, "I apologize for the inconvenience," is worse than useless. It just makes it worse. It feels insulting.
It feels like you're talking to a wall.
A polite wall, but a wall nonetheless. But a human saying, "Oh my gosh, I completely understand why you're stressed. That is an absolute nightmare. Let me personally call the courier right now, and I will call you back in 10 minutes with an update." That saves the relationship. That turns a potential one-star review into a customer for life.
That is the difference between retaining a customer and losing them forever, plus all their friends.
Precisely.
Okay.
And that is why those wellness programs we mentioned earlier, atomic energy, vapiness, are so strategic. You need emotionally healthy, supported humans to handle that emotional labor. And AI doesn't burn out, but it also doesn't care. A burned out human doesn't care either. A supported, healthy human, that is your true competitive advantage.
So bringing this all together, we started with the stress of the Tuesday afternoon inbox, that feeling of just drowning. We looked at the hidden, invisible costs of ignoring it, the billions lost to slow responses.
Yep.
We debunked the cheap outsourcing myth and the friction of the Manila Gap. And we landed on this sweet spot, this cultural nearshore in South Africa. and a managed model like the one from VA Connect.
It's really a fundamental shift in mindset. We need to stop thinking about support as desperate hiring, just reacting to a crisis. We need to think of it as strategic infrastructure.
Building a scalable, resilient team, not just plugging holes in a sinking boat.
Right. And the South African advantage is real. You get the Western cultural alignment, the Goldilocks time zone, and the high education levels. And with a managed partner like VA Connect, you get the systems on top of that. The VA varsity training, the wellness focus that ensure reliability and quality over the long term.
It really seems like the future belongs to companies that can masterfully blend technology with humanity. It's not one or the other, it's both.
And that leads me to my final thought for you to mull over. In a world where every single one of your competitors has access to the same AI tools, where everyone has ChatGPT and the same automation software, the companies that win won't be the ones with the best bots.
No?
No. They will be the ones who use technology to empower their humans to be more human. The ultimate competitive advantage of the future is empathy. You cannot automate empathy. But, as we've seen today, you can outsource it if and only if you choose the right partner who values that empathy as much as you do.
That is a powerful place to leave it. Empathy as a competitive advantage. I love that.
It's the only thing that can't be commoditized.
Well, there you have it. A deep dive into the cultural nearshore. If your inbox is haunting you, maybe it's time to look south. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks for listening.